NS. Rutherford Issues with Brian Barrett on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and streaming at WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford Issues is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric, who's helped provide light, comfort, and connection in our community since 1936. As your trusted energy advisor, MTE is always here to help. More online at MTE.com or download the My MTE app. It's our pleasure this morning to chat with Dawn Roberts, the Executive Director of the Beesley Animal Foundation and Clinic, on a very chilly day. And Miss Dawn, staying warm, I hope.
I'm trying my best, yes.
You and everybody else, and it's been brutally cold. I'm not sure that we've seen air temperatures as cold as we've had. This is colder than even December of 22, I think.
I think so, yeah. I don't know. I think Canada and Minnesota need to come in and get this weather back.
Yeah. I was just talking to Scott this morning here at the station, and it's like, man, I don't know how those folks do it.
Well, I have family in Minnesota, and for some reason, it's a colder cold down here.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's just like it's a hotter hot here than it is in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We just get the humidity that makes it colder and hotter, so.
And I guess in Minnesota, you're used to, shoveling, and you got snow blowers and all that kind of thing to get the snow and out of your driveways and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to my cousins, and we actually have more snow than they do right now. So
that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this can be especially hard on, first of all, Beesley being open. I'm sure that's been very difficult with the roads being bad here.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had to be closed all week. So, there's going to be 3 days of surgeries that we're going to have to reschedule. So we're just, I'm just asking everyone to have patience and understanding, because it is just too dangerous, and my staff couldn't get out, and I certainly didn't want pet parents to be out on the road and not being able to get out, and then something happened to them.
So the rest of the week, then, the clinic?
We're planning on being open tomorrow.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah, that's the plan anyway. So hopefully the sun will help a little bit, but yeah, we're planning on being open tomorrow. So it's not going to be quite as cold.
Yeah, let's hope that the sunshine does its thing, even though it's still going to be below freezing. The sun always helps with that.
It does. At least it makes you feel better at night.
Yeah, that's true. So I was kind of trying to walk us into conversation here about while we may have difficulties, we know when to put on an extra layer and how to keep warm ourselves, but for our animals, extra care has to go into that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we're cold, your dogs and cats are probably cold too. And it's going to be harder on your younger pets as well as your older pets. I mean, we start aching with arthritis as we age, and same with the dogs. So you just have to kind of just keep all that in mind when you're going out, and just making sure that, your vet, you have an annual vet visit, and just kind of discuss all that with your vet to make sure that you have what you need in this kind of cold weather.
Well, I know that our soon-to-be 16-year-old Westie is walking a little slower, and it's she's not really bending those back legs. She's got some arthritis in those back knees, and so I'm sure, just like us, when we say we can feel it in our bones and, aches and things in the colder weather, that happens with our animals too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've got an older one too that's got an issue with her back leg, and, it's harder. I mean, you got to be careful on the ice. She's having a hard time even just being able to walk and getting around and stuff like that. So, it's just, you just have to, don't leave them out for long periods of time. Your long-haired, larger dogs, like my labs, they love being outside longer periods, but it's still a little bit too cold for them. But my little Chihuahua, the short-haired, smaller dogs, the belly will touch the snow. They probably can't stay out as long as, a bigger dog like a Alaskan Malamute or a Great Pyrenees or things like that. But you still need to have shelter for those kind of animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my little Chihuahua, as she's going through through the backyard, it's almost like she's having to hop through it because it's,
Yeah.
5 inches is a lot for her.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, they can bury you could almost have them buried.
Yeah, yeah, and I see people who will put like a little jacket on their pups, and I knew back when I used to have horses and showed horses and things of that nature, big blankets for them, especially when we were traveling and things like that. So I guess all of that is to say that there are some things out there you can do to keep your pets warm, and those things can help too.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, just make sure that it's dry. I mean, if they're out and their sweater or whatever gets wet and cold, just make sure the next time they go out, you have a change of clothes. Like, I don't know how many sweaters my little Chihuahua has, but, just anything to kind of try to keep them cold. And, if they have any health, conditions like diabetes or, Cushing's or anything like that, that will definitely mess with their being able to regulate their body temperature.
Oh, that's a very good point. So, um, I guess there's usually a telltale sign if they're chilly, especially in dogs, maybe even other animals. They kind of do the little shiver thing.
Yeah, whining and shivering. If they get anxious, stops moving, or just seems weak, or that could all be signs of hypothermia. I mean, when you're below zero, it does not take long for an animal to get hypothermia, just like humans. So, frostbite is a little bit harder to detect, but if you see any of those signs and they're just standing around, anxious, shivering, whining, just get inside and get them warmed up, or consult your vet immediately just to make sure that there's nothing more you should be doing.
Mm-hmm. I know our dogs like to get under the blankets, but one in particular doesn't necessarily get under a blanket unless she's cold, and but they've all tried to find a blanket or maybe even 2 blankets and crawl under the covers.
Right. Exactly. With the TVA is saying that, we need to limit our household heat to 68. I mean, that might be cold to some of these dogs, especially when they've been outside. So just try to have a safe place for them to be. And, if you can't bring your dogs in, or even your feral community cats, just give them a shelter that is, 3-sided. And there is a new law that took effect last year that, they have to be 3-sided, protected from the weather, off the ground, and straw is the best bedding to keep them warm. And you don't want to put a blanket, because then if it gets wet, it just freezes and it makes them cold and things like that. So, just if you can't bring them inside for the few days it's really cold, then just make sure that you have them set up correctly outside, and just watch out for heat sources. You don't want to put a lamp in there and have it catch fire.
Right. That's a good point. And the straw, what makes that the best bedding? Is it because they can kind of burrow into it and
Burrow?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, and it's less irritating to them. And then, like I said, if they burrow and you put a lot in there, I mean, it just might not. It just doesn't seep through. Like if you put a blanket, the moisture is gonna go all the way through, and then it'll freeze and get cold. So, straw is always much more resilient to the cold weather.
Joining us today, Dawn Roberts, the Executive Director of the Beesley Animal Foundation and Clinic. Today, we're talking about some animal safety and cold weather. And Dawn, this is a cold snap that is going to wind up being a week long. It's going to get cold
Right.
again this weekend. So it's abnormal for us, so it's abnormal for our animals too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's just something that they might like it at first, but my dogs have been spending less and less time outside. I guess the colder it is too. I mean, it makes a big difference when it's 0 versus 20.
Right,
So,
right. What about our larger animals like horses and goats and whatnot, farm animals that we might have? I mean, it's just not feasible to bring them inside. Hopefully, you've got maybe a stable or whatnot, but sometimes those animals just have to be out in the elements.
right. Yeah. And I mean, the main thing is that they can have like a shelter to get away from the wind and the weather if they need to. as far as horses and cat, I mean, as long as they have food, hay is the best thing for them. That just generates heat with them. Goats, they're easier to contain in a closed-in area and everything. But cows, you really can't keep anywhere. And my horses are out 24/7. But the older animals, the older horses, you might need to put a blanket to just help give them a little bit more warmth. But the way that these animals, livestock animals, are made, they have the tools with their coats to be able to withstand a lot of these temperatures as long as they can get away from the wind and the weather. So having a run in or a line of trees or something like that, and then just all the hay they can eat, that should be enough to, keep them warm and get them through this. And fresh water. You just have to make sure that the water, you've got to keep them drinking.
And that's a good point as well about water, because water is going to freeze. So you've got to make sure that they have fresh water and don't just expect, to water them once a day and they have water for all day, because it's going to freeze.
Right, yeah. I mean, you're going to have to, if you don't have a tank heater or heated buckets or anything, and, depending on how big your herd is or whatever, and goats and stuff, I saw that, you can use a crock pot for for chickens or for goats or something, and plug that in, and that keeps the water warm. But, you'll have to go out and break the ice or have tank heaters or something like that to keep water, because you just need to keep them drinking.
I had never heard about a crock pot, but I guess turning it on warm or whatnot, and it's going to just keep it from freezing. So that's a great idea there. Let's see. Anything else? Well, let's talk about cats and cars, because especially if you've got an outside cat or a feral cat, they like to find someplace warm, and I don't know why, but they really like to get under the car, don't they?
Right. Well, if it's been running, it's warm. The engine is warm, so that's where they'll seek, shelter and everything. So, yeah, you always want to go before you start your car or move it. You always want to go make some noise, pound on it or something, and make sure that their cat doesn't come crawling out of there before you start it, because getting stuck in the engine can cause injury to them. And then I've heard stories where a cat has made miles of trips in a vehicle, and then they're away from their home. So, yeah, you just always want to make sure that you make some noise and look and make sure that there's no cat that's kind of taking refuge in the warm vehicle.
I've heard of people honking the horn or just something to make noise, and that'll scare them out.
Yeah, scare them away. Yeah, exactly.
Another thing to ask you about here are the paws on your dogs, and we have these little booties, and it's really hard to put them on because they don't like them, number one.
Right. Yeah.
but they're little rubber booties, and so we tried that for a little bit, and number one, they were hard, and they would fall off, and they would flip them off and things like that just to get them off their paws. But I guess take an extra long look at those and just make sure that they're warm and not cracked and that kind of thing, right? In the cold.
Yeah, I mean, the cold can, the cold and snow and ice can, just kind of like our hands get chapped and everything in winter. You just want to take a look at them, make sure that they're not being, cracked up or starting to bleed from the effects of the snow. If you've got paws that have the long hair, you want to make sure that there's no snow packed in there or anything like that. And then also you should always just get in the habit of, especially if you're going walking in the neighborhood, just wipe them off, because, a lot of de-icers and the salt that's used to clear our roads is toxic to pets. So you don't want them coming in and licking their paws and everything. So, and antifreeze, and, there could be antifreeze around on the roads and driveways and stuff now, with people making sure their cars are good, that you just want to make sure that you wipe down your pet's paws, just so that, they're not going to be licking anything that can cause them, any harm or anything like that.
And a lot of people like to take their pets on car rides. And, in the summertime, we always hear, don't leave your pet in the car because it can get extremely hot inside the car in the summertime. I would assume the same would be the case in the winter. It can get really cold really quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can, if you get stuck somewhere, or you're at the store, or you just decide to take your pet somewhere, and your vehicle is going to get cold very quickly. So, in this kind of weather, it's just better to kind of keep them at home, just so that, if something happens and you're in the ditch, you just have yourself to worry about. You don't have your pets to worry about. And, that's kind of our thinking in closing the clinic is, when it was 1 degree this morning, I'd hated to think that my pet parents were going to be out on the road, and a lot of them live on side roads that aren't plowed, and I would just hate to think that something had happened to them.
Yeah. And do you find that animals eat a little more in the really cold weather?
Yeah, mine do. You just want to, you don't, a lot of people think that an overweight pet or with little bit extra padding is going to do better in the, the winter. But, there is, health, risks to having a pet that has too much weight on them. So you want to keep them always at a healthy weight, and your vet can help you determine what that is. But yeah, they're going to need a little bit of extra energy. And so you're probably going to need to bump up their food a little bit, especially if they're going to be outside playing and in the snow and things like that, just to kind of give them the extra energy that they need to kind of keep themselves warm and keep them, from losing a lot of weight.
Yeah. Well, I had to put my little Chihuahua on a bit of I'm calling it a diet modification, but the veterinarian suggested a little less food, and to make sure she doesn't feel like she's really, really hungry, to eat feed them green beans. So
yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that too. Yeah, green beans, anything like that. That's got less calories, and yet they still think they're getting something. So.
Yeah. Dawn, stay warm. Thanks for sharing these tips here today on cold weather and our pets.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me, and you stay warm too.
Will do. That is Dawn Roberts.
All right.
With the Beesley Animal Foundation and Clinic joining us here on Rutherford Issues. Be sure to go to WGNSradio.com/listen to watch or hear your favorite shows on WGNS, AM, FM, online, and, of course, Big G TV on demand. Have a good day.
Hello friends, Lenny Farmer with Jennings & Ayers Funeral Home. More than I can count, we have taken care of families who were totally caught off guard with the passing of a loved one. There are so many details